Halloween, now one of the most celebrated holidays worldwide, has deeply sinister origins. Born from ancient rituals involving death, spirits, and the unknown, this seemingly harmless night of costumes and candy masks a far darker history. Today, over 175 million people in the US alone celebrate Halloween. But do they know its terrifying past? Halloween, now synonymous with jack-o'-lanterns, haunted houses, and sugary treats, wasn't always a night of innocent fun. Its origins are steeped in ancient traditions that conjure images of death, the supernatural, and rituals that sought to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. This holiday's history traces back over 2,000 years to a time when Celtic tribes roamed the British Isles, practicing a festival called Samhain. Over the centuries, this pagan celebration evolved, becoming intertwined with religious beliefs, fear of the supernatural, and eventually the commercialization we see today. But what was Halloween truly meant to be? And how did it transform from a terrifying night of spirits to a commercialized, candy-coated celebration? The Halloween most people know today is a sanitized version of its former self. As people celebrate with costume parties and family-friendly activities, the dark and mysterious roots of this holiday have been largely forgotten. A significant misconception is that Halloween has always been about children, costumes, and candy, when in reality it was once deeply tied to life, death, and the afterlife. The modern image of Halloween is a result of centuries of transformation, diluting its original spiritual significance. Many don't realize that Halloween was once considered a dangerous time when the veil between the world of the living and the dead was at its thinnest, allowing spirits to roam freely. The commercial push of the 20th century also helped reshape Halloween into a family-friendly night, erasing much of the fear and mysticism tied to its ancient origins. But in the process, a key element has been lost: the recognition of its deeper meanings, rooted in our fear of death and the unknown. To understand the origins of Halloween, we must travel back to ancient Celtic territories, roughly 2,000 years ago. The Celts, who lived in what is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated their New Year on November the 1st. The night before, October 31st, marked the festival of Samhain, a sacred and terrifying event. This was the night when it was believed the barrier between the world of the living and the dead was at its thinnest. Spirits could return to Earth, and both good and evil forces were thought to be at their most powerful. The Celts would light massive bonfires, and people wore costumes made from animal skins to ward off harmful spirits. Offerings were made to the gods in hopes of protection for the harsh winter ahead. Samhain wasn't just about celebrating the dead, it was about appeasing them. Farmers would leave food and drink outside to ensure that their crops and livestock were spared from the wrath of vengeful ghosts. As Christianity began to spread across Europe, the festival of Samhain collided with Christian doctrine. In the 7th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, a day to honor saints and martyrs, and its eve, October 31st, became known as All Hallows' Eve, eventually morphing into Halloween. Despite the Church's efforts to co-opt the pagan festival, many of the old Samhain traditions persisted, particularly in Ireland and Scotland. People continued to believe in spirits, and the tradition of wearing costumes to ward off evil spirits remained strong. By the 19th century, when Irish immigrants brought Halloween to the United States, it began to evolve into something new. Over time, Halloween transformed from a solemn night of remembrance into a community-centered celebration. The introduction of trick-or-treating in the early 20th century added an element of mischief and fun. Rooted in the medieval practice of souling, where the poor would go door to door asking for food in exchange for prayers for the dead, trick-or-treating quickly became a favorite activity for children, though its origins were anything but innocent. As the years went on, Halloween became more and more commercialized, with companies seeing the opportunity to profit from the growing popularity of costumes, candy, and decorations. By the mid-20th century, Halloween had cemented its place as a cultural phenomenon in the U.S., becoming a night where fears of the supernatural were transformed into thrills and excitement. But underneath the surface, many of the holiday's original fears and rituals still echo today. The true turning point in Halloween's history came in the early 20th century, when it was commercialized beyond recognition. Starting in the 1920s, retailers began seeing Halloween as a prime opportunity to boost sales. Candy companies, costume manufacturers, and the film industry all began capitalizing on the holiday's spooky appeal. The result was a transformation from a dark, mysterious night of spiritual significance into a light-hearted, child-centered holiday. One key event that contributed to Halloween's evolution was the rise of Halloween-themed parties during the 1920s and 1930s. As the holiday was being stripped of its eerie, spiritual elements, repackaged for mainstream America. These parties often involved games, costumes, and festive food, turning the holiday into a social event for children and adults alike. The invention of mass-produced costumes in the 1950s further solidified Halloween's commercialization. No longer were costumes about scaring off spirits. Now, children dressed as superheroes, princesses, or popular TV characters, marking a significant departure from the holiday's origins. Perhaps the most significant moment in this commercialization was the release of the horror movie Halloween in 1978. This film didn't just become a cult classic. It solidified Halloween's association with horror, terror, and the supernatural in popular culture. From this point onward, Halloween wasn't just a holiday. It was a genre, inspiring countless haunted houses, horror films, and ghost tours, cementing its status as a night of fright and thrills rather than a time to honor the dead. Halloween has undergone a radical transformation over the centuries. What began as a solemn, sacred festival to honor the spirits of the dead has morphed into a commercial juggernaut driven by candy, costumes, and horror films. Yet, beneath the surface, the eerie echoes of its origins remain. From Samhain's bonfires and offerings to the blending of Christian traditions and modern-day commercial interests, Halloween continues to evolve. It is a night where the supernatural, fear, and fun collide, creating a holiday that fascinates and terrifies us in equal measure. As Halloween approaches, we invite you to reflect on the darker history of this holiday. How do you celebrate it, and do you ever think about its origins while enjoying the festivities? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below.